The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is a proud supporter of Indian Country Today. Students at Cronkite News and Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma cover indigenous communities together. This important work is distributed by more than 100 news organizations. This collaboration provides a much-needed boost to coverage of Native American communities nationwide. Learn more at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Tholahungva. Here are the headlines from Indian Country Today. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy Chiefs Council says construction cannot go forward without the people's consent. Traditional Six Nations chiefs in Canada have declared a formal moratorium on development within the Haldimand Tract, which is a 6-mile stretch of land on both sides of the Grand River from Dundalk, Ontario to Lake Erie. The Aboriginal People's Television Network reports that in an effort to lay claim to the lands, the builder, Foxgate Developments, is filing a $222 million damage claim. Foxgate is suing the province and the Canadian government to confirm the area is not subject to land claims by Indigenous groups. In a separate case, a judge concluded the 1844 Haudenosaunee surrender was valid, at least when it came to contested land in the city of Brantford, which is north of the area where Foxgate wants to develop. But the legitimacy of these transactions has been disputed. The traditional chiefs and the group, 1492 Landback Lane, maintain the land is unceded. Tribal leaders do not acknowledge Canadian jurisdiction and say they have little faith the courts will bring them justice. Rick Santorum and CNN are coming under fire for racist and inaccurate comments made by Santorum. Santorum is a political commentator for CNN. He's also a former U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, and he spoke recently at a conference for the Young Americans Foundation and said in part, "We birthed a nation from nothing. There was nothing here. Yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, there isn't much Native American culture in American culture." Everyone from Fawn Sharp, the president of the National Congress of American Indians, to the leadership of Illuminative called out Santorum for his remarks, which they say whitewash history and erase the contributions of Native Americans. Others called on CNN to fire him. The Native American Journalists Association went one step further and urged Indigenous journalists to not work at CNN. Naja cited other examples of CNN's lack of understanding when it comes to covering American Indians and Alaska Natives. On election night, a CNN reporter referred to the Native voting bloc as something else. CNN refused to apologize for that comment, according to Naja. And last week, a CNN host incorrectly identified Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan as a white woman. The Lieutenant Governor makes it known that she's an enrolled citizen of the White Earth Band of Ojibwe. CNN has not corrected that omission either. Naja is calling on CNN to dismiss Santorum and urges advertisers and other journalism diversity organizations to withdraw their support from CNN. A health clinic is opening on the tribal lands of the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians in Michigan. It's called Mishkiki Community Clinic. Mishkiki means medicine in Potawatomi. The clinic will provide primary medical and dental care to tribal citizens who qualify for Medicaid. The tribe straddles 2 states, Michigan and Indiana. Priscilla Gattis is the director of the tribe's Department of Health Services. She says this all started for one reason.
But I think what really kind of drove impetus to get this clinic started was the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the main things that we've seen out of the pandemic is it's really highlighted a lot of the healthcare disparities that there are for not only Native Americans, but other minority groups.
The clinic will focus on COVID-19 testing and vaccinations. A tremendous loss for the Tongva tribe in California with the death of an elder. Julia Louise Bogany died of complications from a stroke. She was 72. Bogany was an educator and language keeper and known as the Wise One. She was legendary throughout Southern California for her mission to preserve Tongva culture through language classes. Bogany pursued partnerships with local institutions and universities and worked to gain recognition for her tribe. You can learn more about her on our website, indiancountrytoday.com. Just search for the headline, Tongva Elder Educator Julia Bogany Dies at 72. Well, legendary skateboarder Tony Hawk is helping build a skate park for the Tana Autumn kids. KVOA reports the Tony Hawk Foundation cut a check for $20,000 to help the Endure Skateboarding Club with the project. The tribe is in southern Arizona, near the border with Mexico. And right now, kids there can only skateboard on a small cemented area that used to be an old basketball court. The nonprofit group Native American Advancement Foundation worked behind the scenes to secure the large donation. In addition, the Fiesta Bowl committee contributed another $25,000 to the park. Construction will start this fall. And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Thalahungva. When we come back, we'll take a look at the 45 years of service to Native youth.
Unity is celebrating a milestone. Unity turns 45 this year. United National Indian Tribal Youth began in 1976 in southwestern Oklahoma. J.R. Cook started with a handful of youth and now has 325 local youth councils in 36 states. He retired in 2013. Joining us today is Unity's Executive Director, Mary Kim Titla. Welcome, Mary Kim.
Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone.
I'm struck first by just how influential Unity has been over the years. And one way to look at that is with your extraordinary roster of alumni.
You know, it's quite amazing. We've had prominent people who have jobs now that are remarkable. And I'm just going to name a few. Chuske Spencer, the actor. And we're pretty proud of him for, of course, everyone knows him from the Twilight series. We have Arvo Mekinen, who is a U.S. attorney in Oklahoma, and also in Oklahoma, Dr. Daryl Meese Cherokee, who is a medical doctor and has his own family practice. We've had lots of tribal leaders, Temet Aguilar, who is chairman of the Pama Band of Luiseño Indians in California, Vivian Juan Saunders, who is in the Tana Autumn Nation, also on her tribal council. So yes, we have an amazing alumni, Dr. Pearl Yellowman, who works for the Navajo Nation and has been a very prominent figure in their fight against COVID-19 this past year.
You know, Mary Kim, like before the pandemic, at least, like you, I was lucky enough to visit a lot of tribal communities. And the one thing that always amazes me is how much talent there is out there. And it doesn't take long to scratch the surface and see it pop up. And that's really what your Unity is all about, is identifying that talent and then building on it.
Absolutely. Unity is magical. And I tell this story all the time. I tell people, you know, it's hard to describe Unity because it's like going to Disneyland. You can talk to people all day long about Disneyland, but until they go there, they won't experience that magic. And that's exactly what Unity is. It inspires hope and changes lives. And we have heard time and time again from people all over the country who say Unity changed my life. And certainly it changed my life. I've come full circle. I was involved with Unity as a young person and then went through the ranks of becoming an advisor and serving as a trustee on the Council of Trustees for Unity. And I never thought I'd be in this seat as executive director of Unity. So it's been an amazing journey. And I think, you know, what young people like best about Unity, and this is what I've heard, is the connections that they make at the activities that we host, the conferences, the mid-year and the national conferences.
You have an extraordinary window on what young people are thinking. How are they dealing with the pandemic and how do they look coming out of that?
Our young people are resilient, just like our Native people in general are resilient. And it's been tough. We have tried to address that this past year by offering these live connections. And every week we just did some research, and we discovered that almost every week this past year, Unity offered some sort of virtual connection. And that's important to our youth. So they have been very busy. Many of them have jumped on the front lines. They've been volunteering. They have been putting food baskets together. They have been, actively engaged in coming up with ways to address the needs of their communities. And I'm very proud of our young people, because they don't want to just sit back and watch things happen. They want to be, at ground zero, getting involved and getting their hands dirty. And that's what leadership building is all about. That's what skill building is all about. It's very much hands-on training. And I'm so happy that our tribal leaders are supportive of that. Many of these youth councils would not exist if they did not have the support of their tribal leaders, or of the leadership of organizations like urban Indian centers, who sponsor a lot of youth organizations. In the past, we had a lot of youth come from Indian reservations, tribal land. But now we've seen the numbers grow in urban areas. We're seeing about 50-50 urban Native youth coming to Unity, as well as reservation-based. So it's very diverse, ages 14 to 24. So we have all the way from middle school to college. And they are, mentoring each other. And so we're really excited about what we're seeing out there.
We only have a few seconds left, but what's next for Unity?
We see a lot of growth. We grew in the last 8 years from 135 youth councils to 325 youth councils. The numbers at our conferences have also jumped. We went from about 1,000 in 2012 to 2,500, as you mentioned. So there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of need for leadership building and for programming that our youth, really demand. So we're going to be working on that, and we're going to continue to meet those demands. We see a lot of growth in our future. We hope that someday we'll have our own building. So we'll just speak that out loud, and I think that it'll happen. So again, just a lot of thanks to all the support out there for helping Unity grow over the last 45 years.
Mary Kim Titla, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
When the winter ice begins to melt in the North Country, it's time for Indigenous people to make maple syrup and sugar in a tradition called sugarbush. In March or April, as daytime temperatures begin to rise above freezing, positive pressure in trees causes sap to rise. Ojibwe have been tapping maple trees, collecting the sap and boiling it down for syrup and sugar for generations. The time and labor-intensive practice began to die out as land and access to the forest grew scarce. In recent years, however, Ojibwe are rekindling the sugar bush as a means to not only collect healthy traditional food, but also as a way to reconnect with the healing properties of subsistence activities. Our national correspondent, Mary Annette Pember, went to 2 sugar bush camps this month to see the process.
It takes about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup, or 8 pounds of maple sugar. Sap is very perishable and must be boiled soon after it's collected. Sugar bush, or ishkagamizagan, is an intensive ephemeral activity that only lasts about 3 weeks per year. When tree buds begin to open, sugar bush is over. Traditionally, families camped out in the forest for days and weeks as they tapped trees and carried the fresh sap to containers where it was boiled over wood fires. Long ago, Ojibwe boiled the sap into sugar rather than syrup. Sugar is lighter and easier to store. Today, most Ojibwe make syrup in a long, hands-on process requiring constant attention to ensure the sap doesn't overboil or burn. People work into the night, keeping watch over the boiling sap. The sap becomes syrup once it reaches a sugar concentration of 66%. Most people use a hydrometer to test the syrup. Small amounts of butter may be periodically added to the syrup in order to keep it from foaming over. On this brisk spring morning, we find Mel Madey in his driveway overseeing the family's sap boiling operation. Lynn Madey Big Boy, director of Mashkazibi Youth Services for the Bad River Band, describes how her son Pierce led her family back to the sugarbush and how they began incorporating the tradition into youth programs.
And so when he was 13, my grandma had just passed away, and he wanted to bring our family back together again. And so we've been doing sugarbush since 2012. And it really has, and so now we do it with our youth program. Now that I'm in this position, we've done it, had a community sugarbush, and we'll continue to grow that each year.
Participating in traditional Ojibwe subsistence activities such as sugarbush has the power to heal those who are struggling with problems such as addiction. It offers the sense of community, belonging, and reconnection with culture. How did our ancestors first figure out that sap could be boiled into sugar? Paul Demain, former editor of News from Indian Country and avid sugarbusher, shares some of the original Ojibwe teachings.
We know that originally they said that a maple tree came and dripped out maple syrup. Essentially, indigenous people, Anishinaabe, ended up lying underneath the tree and letting those trees drip into their mouth with pure maple syrup. And they gained weight and became basically under the influence of what they call the Wendigo influence, or the out of balance spirit, in a sense. So in other words, Winnebuju or the other money dues and spirits were saying, look at how lazy the Indians have become. They just lay there and let that sap flow into their mouths. And we need to do something about it. And so they did. And so between the Creator and other spirits, what they did is they thinned out the syrup to create maple sap. And therefore you got to work really hard to get at that delicious ingredient.
The sap has been boiling all day and into the evening as the Madey family prepares to finish this batch of syrup, carefully removing it from the fire and pouring it into containers.
There's nothing better than gathering the family up to sit around a campfire and relax a little bit and get out of the hectic pace of modern society and all the worries about COVID and everything else that's been going on. There's a great joy in just giving sugar cakes and maple syrup away, taking a gallon to the drum dance ceremony and giving it away in ceremonial, giving candy and stuff to your grandchildren and giving it to your grandparents and things like that. There's a great joy in giving these products away rather than just converting them for monetary value. But it is a medicine. Number one, it is a food and a medicine, just like most foods are medicines as well. And you see indigenous people responding to that gift of medicine and that gift of food in a ceremonial way. So we put tobacco down, and at some point I spoke for the first medicine, the first drink, the first sap of the year, just to give thanks to the trees and say, hey man, this is wonderful, man. It's like unbelievable, a sweet, beautiful gift.
In Odena, Wisconsin, Mary Annette Pember for Indian Country Today.
We'll be right back with a look at an effort to change the name of a body of water in the Pacific Northwest. All across the country, there are states, cities, and roads named after Native people. There are also a number of landmarks that carry the names of people who have questionable pasts. This is the case in Washington, where a body of water north of Puget Sound carries the name of a man who is notorious for whipping to death a black woman, a man who led the killings of Siganku Lakota men, women, and children in Nebraska, and even took the U.S. to the brink of war with Great Britain. The man was General William S. Harney. He served in the United States Army. Now there's a movement to change the name of Harney Channel. Richard Walker is a freelance journalist, and he wrote about this for Indian Country Today. Richard joins us now to talk about this effort to change the name. Welcome, Richard.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Has anyone tried to change this channel's name before?
I don't believe that this specific channel has been the subject of an effort to change the name, but there have been several name changes in the region within the last 10, 20 years. The most recent being the name of a bay on Shaw Island, one of the San Juan Islands. The name was changed from Squaw Bay to Reef Net Bay, which was seen to be more appropriate and more immediately relevant as well, because it refers to a form of traditional fishing that originated in the San Juan Islands and was actually considered a gift from the creator to the first people of the islands, which were the Lummi and Samish, the Songish, and others.
So, well, first, what are the prospects for an actual change here?
Well, my understanding is the proponents have they placed a petition on change.org, and the last I looked, I think they had over 500 signatures. They got those in pretty short order in about a week. It's now going before the proposal is going before the Board of County Commissioners in San Juan County for approval or support. And then it's on the agenda, I believe, in May or June before the State Committee on Geographic Names. If it's approved by the State Committee on Geographic Names, it will go before the State Board of Geographic Names for approval, and then the name change, I believe, would take effect.
We know General Harney has a despicable reputation. Tell us about the possibility for new names.
Well, the name that let me give you some background on that. There's a gentleman named Ken Carrasco who lives on Orcas Island, and his home is near what is now called Harney Channel. And he's a retired fisheries biologist who also had served in the Coast Guard. So he's very interested in navigational landmarks and how places got their names. And so he started doing some research into Harney Channel and learned the history of General Harney. And he thought that it would be appropriate to change the name to somebody who had better ties to the islands and had been a more positive influence there. And he thought that Henry Caillou would be an appropriate name. Henry Caillou was born in 1869, passed away in 1959, and kind of was a bridge between cultures and eras. He was Coast Salish. His mother was Coast Salish. His father was a non-native settler on Orcas Island, believed to be the first non-native permanent settler there. And so Henry grew up kind of in two worlds at a time of great change on the islands. And he, using traditional indigenous knowledge and this business acumen that enabled him to thrive in this new economy, he became a very influential person whose actions and involvements still affect the lives of islanders today. He was, among his many accomplishments, he was and is to date the only indigenous islander to have served on the Board of County Commissioners in San Juan County. He also founded or co-founded the island's electrical utility. And so and he was also a very influential in the fishing industry and in the maritime industry as well. And so it was felt by Ken Carrasco and other proponents and supporters of this that Henry Caillou would be a much more appropriate representative to have his name on that body, that channel of water, rather than General Harney.
Washington has gone through so many changes really in the past 50 years. I remember when I was a young person, it was the Mississippi of Indian country. And now it's viewed as a pretty progressive state when it comes to tribal relations. And this kind of reflects that change, because you think about 50 years ago and it never would have made the list.
Well, there's a lot of support for changing names to reflect the complete history of the islands and of the state. As you know, this inland sea here is actually comprised of several channels and straits, and there's sounds and bays. And to simplify the identity of this place, which at one time was broadly referred to as Puget Sound, and it's really not. Puget Sound is one of those bodies. The name was changed to Salish Sea, identifying it as a sea, and then also honoring the first people of this place, the Coast Salish people.
Richard Walker, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Thank you for watching. We will be back with another edition tomorrow. I'm Mark Trahant.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
Indian Country Today is produced at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
This is Indian Country Today.